Hi, I'm Dr. Allison Cole, sleep medicine specialist and bona fide chronic insomniac. Welcome to the Sleep is My Waking Passion podcast. Remember, knowledge is empowerment, and if applied correctly, it can help you biohack your way to a better night of sleep, just like I did.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sleep is My Waking Passion podcast. We are now in season 5, which is super exciting. And today I have with me a patient advocate with deep personal experience, both having a large weight loss journey as well as having obstructive sleep apnea. So Jasmine Steele, welcome to the program. It is so exciting to have you.
Thank you.
Some of the background with Jasmine, I actually met her at Sleep 2024. And we really hit it off. And she has been working with the Alliance of Sleep Apnea Partners. And I've been talking to Monica as well. And she is now part of their community leadership program. And she is going to be moving on, hopefully, to actually being a truly trained patient advocate speaker. She is very interested in helping the veteran population. And she has Native American roots. So she wants to also help the Native American population. These are two populations that really are in deep need of maximizing their sleep and their sleep quality. They really do suffer from poor sleep quality, be it from having obstructive sleep apnea or for other reasons like PTSD and all the insomnia issues that go along with veterans, who are very deep to my heart. She is also herself a veteran of the United States Air Force. And she's also a mom. She's 43. She's got 3 kids. She's a vet. She's also the creator and owner of Steele International LLC. That sounds so chic. I love that. And she hosts a life coaching program. So she can work with anyone, and she does so digitally. She is based in Arizona. So I just want to let you know that we are going to have all sorts of information where you can find her and reach her. And, you know, she really wants to bring awareness to the issues that we are suffering with. And this is probably some of the funnest stuff I do. I love talking to experts, but Jasmine, I really love talking to patients who are willing to share their journey. There's so much that you all can teach the rest of us, be it just an uninitiated listener trying to learn more about sleep, or, a skilled practitioner who still has limitations in terms of what we know about sleep. And I'm trained in it, and I'm still learning every day. So thank you for sharing your beautiful brain with the rest of us.
Oh, my pleasure. I want to rewind just a little bit. It's Steele Intentional. Steele International is a very large corporation, and I can't compete.
All right. Oh my goodness. Steele Intentional. Guys, that was me reading my notes and kind of not reading them properly. So thank you for that, Jasmine. I appreciate the correction. We just did our fact check today. So there you go.
No problem. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And you're right. It's so important to share the information that we're gaining, because none of us really have a full grip on how deep this goes. And that's actually one of the reasons why I want to share my story, because mine actually started when I was 3 or 4 years old. I had no idea how deep it went until my brain actually started to heal. And then I just started doing the whys. Why? And the deeper I went, it led me down this rabbit hole of just continuous, overlapping layers of how exactly dangerous this is. And you get to a point where you have dementia and your brain is literally failing on you, and you're almost 300 pounds and your life is crumbling around you and you have no idea what is going on. And you go to specialists after specialists after specialists, and everybody's like, no, all of your readings are normal. And then you start going, well, what is normal? Am I normal? Do I fall into that category? And then you start to realize that no, none of us are normal, especially not when it comes to sleep apnea, because every single one of us deals with it differently. And then you have to break it down into a physiological sense, where each one of us has emotional blockages that spawn from our childhood, and that creates a different roadmap inside of our bodies. Each one of us has a different roadmap. And with mine, it began with night terrors.
When you're talking about night terrors, are you talking about when you were 3 or 4 years old, you started having night terrors?
I did.
Oh.
Yeah.
And what were your night terrors like?
Oh, they're, terrifying. You basically get to a point where you wake up completely startled, and you're terrified of something, but you don't know what. You don't know if it's a dream. You don't know if there's something happening to your body. You don't know if maybe the dog jumped on you. You have really no idea of what caused it, but you are actually terrified of nothing.
And did you actually recall, these wake ups kind of later on down the line, or were these things that you were sort of unaware of and unearthed as you got older and you were reflecting back on your childhood?
I was fully aware of them then. And as I grew, I started to disassociate. There's no way that could be anything huge. There's no way that had any bearing on what's going on in my adult life. And I grind my teeth, and I had severe sinus issues, and I snored like crazy, and I walked in my sleep. My mom used to put locks on the very top of the door because she'd find me out down the road. We lived out in the country, so I mean, the worst thing that was going to happen was a coyote, but she would put these locks on the top of the door, and none of it made any sense.
It's fascinating, by the way. So it's probably much more common than we are talking about because you're a kid at this time. But what you're highlighting is that kids can present in maybe not so obvious ways, mixed with some more obvious ways. So you're mentioning the snoring as a child.
Right.
You are mentioning, the fact that you kind of woke up kind of startled and sort of unclear. You had sleepwalking, the fancy word for it. That is something that we don't necessarily always see in conjunction with sleep apnea, but I find it fascinating. It's often something that we will eventually grow out of. But yours sounded pretty profound because usually, my kids do it on rare occasion. Usually it's like you can just be like, all right, get back in bed, and you sort of just steer them back and they're fine. Like you took off. You went on a journey. That is like an extreme, you don't see that all the time. And there's some family history there. And you had one other symptom that you just mentioned to me.
Grinding teeth.
Yes, the grinding teeth. Thank you. So we call that bruxism, guys. And so we see the bruxism and the snoring a lot in adults. Sometimes we see them describe nightmares. But I find it fascinating that, like, at the time that you were 3 or 4 years old, when you were a kid, nobody knew that any of this was a thing, right? Your mom's just trying to be like, I don't know why she's doing this, but I'm just going to make sure she doesn't escape so we don't lose her.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
It definitely didn't help that we were out on a ranch. And so, the closest doctor to us was 2 hours away. But none of the research had been done. Nobody had any idea. They're like, oh, it's normal. No big deal. But as time went by, things just started falling apart on me. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. But it was 5, 6, 7, 8. By the time I was 20 years old, I had my first spinal fusion because my vertebrae were corroding. My discs had completely failed on me. And my spouse at the time, when I was 26, he said to me, is there anything that's not broken on you? And I was like, honestly, I don't think so.
Wow. So you were dealing with all this issue, these back pain issues and everything, all from the age of 26?
No, actually, I had my first fusion when I was 21.
Whoa. Okay.
Doctor after doctor, they're like, you're too young to be having this. I had hypothyroidism, my eyes, my ears, my skin. To this day, my skin is 10 years further than it should be. I've got the skin of a 50-year-old. And my nervous system, my blood vessels, everything was completely failing on me. And I just could not figure it out. And I went to everyone I could possibly imagine. And it was finally an endocrinologist that I went to. And he was more of a holistic practitioner. And of course, all of his studies came back regular. And I was just scratching my head and I was just at my wit's end. And on his questionnaire, he didn't even have anything about sleep apnea. But he had overheard me saying something to one of the nurses, and he goes, did I hear you say something about sleep apnea? And I said, yeah, the VA flagged me for it about 6 years ago, but I also have severe claustrophobia. I can't wear the CPAP. And at the time, the VA only offered the CPAP. And so I was like, I'm not touching that thing with a 10-foot pole. It's not happening. I would rather die. And he goes, well, looks like you're on that track. And I said, well, what do we do now? And he goes, well, sweetie, sleep apnea is your problem. That's what's causing all of this. And I was like, what do you mean? You're telling me the little bit of lack of sleep, and this is how ignorant I was at the time, a little bit of lack of sleep can cause all of these issues. My bone, my teeth were breaking, my bones, my skin, my hair, my nails. I was losing organs. I had just massive cellular deterioration. It was just, everything was falling apart. And I had severe IBS by the time I was 14 years old. But there was just thing after thing after thing after thing, and nobody could figure out what it was at that point. But at that point, after seeing the endocrinologist, I said, okay, we're going to go back and see if the VA has changed their policy and see if they can offer something. I went back, they still hadn't changed it. Luckily, at the time, my spouse had private insurance. So we went through private insurance. We were able to get treatment that way with the BiPAP. And the BiPAP, I was able to suffer through that. But it still took me about 4 months to be able to actually keep it on steadily. I mean, for night after night after night, I was just ripping it off. I was panicking, throwing it across the room. I was like, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. And lo and behold, the more that I gave it, the more time that I invested in it, little by little by little, my brain started to heal. It was like I could see clearly. And I started looking around and I was like, what in the world has happened? My entire life has fallen apart. I don't remember half of my kids' lives. I'm looking at pictures of my children and there's no like physiological connection to those memories. I'm looking at like a magazine image and I'm like, what is this? How is it actually possible that you could get to a point where you don't remember your own kids? You know, and I just went on this massive healing journey trying to figure out how to reverse as much of the damage as I could, and started following neuroscientists and all kinds of holistic practitioners, energy workers, sound frequencies, biofeedback, magnetic stimulation, you name it. I've tried it. When I finally started to use the machine consistently, I started to notice that my body was doing things that I had never experienced before. I mean, I started to pee regularly. I was like, what is this? My kids were always like, Mom, I don't understand what's going on with you. And I'm like, you know what? Nobody understands what's going on with me. Nobody. But it just got to a point where I was just so baffled when I started to do my own research into every last medical issue that I had growing up being directly tied to it. And I even got to the point where I was having heat exhaustion. And I would go outside and it would be a 5-degree difference. And I would fall on the ground with a migraine, a splitting migraine. I would have bags of ice on my head. I couldn't move. I could hardly breathe. I was just completely melting. And that's tied to it as well. You know, when your blood oxygen level is so low already and then you attempt to get your heart rate up, you have a problem. But the more that I dug, the more that I found that for me, what initiated my sleep apnea, and mine is obstructive, but there's no reason for it. There's not an actual obstruction. My ligaments are fine. My adenoids are fine. The shape of my throat is fine. There's nothing wrong structurally. So there's no reason why it should be obstructed. But what I found was that mine was cortisol levels. Because mine spawned from CPTSD, from severe complex childhood trauma. I mean, I did have a traumatic childhood. I got to a point where I was looking at it through a different lens. When I started to go to therapy to try and, trace where all of it came from, what triggered all of these different things, I started to really go, wow, I actually did go through some very traumatic things as a child that I really never even pieced together. But mine had a bit of a twist to it. Mine was a little more traumatic for me because I also found that I'm a highly sensitive human. And I had no idea that I was capable of absorbing other people's energy. For me, an interaction with another person actually causes me physical stress. It stresses my body out. So if I'm not having an interaction with somebody who's very authentic, who's a truth teller, who's not wearing a mask, my body feels it. And because I was having those kinds of interactions on a regular basis, I was continually stressed and my body just could not take it. And I developed sleep apnea.
Well, what I find fascinating too is it sounds like you, even from when you were really little, had a lot of symptoms of sleep apnea. And what we know about sleep apnea is if there is a tendency for your airway to not be perfect, and the criteria for kids is like, hey, I'm not breathing 1 time an hour. Like the criteria is much stricter, I guess, much more restrictive in kids, because a little bit of sleep apnea goes a long way in terms of impacting how you function. And I find it fascinating because you have sort of this physiologic component that you're describing from a younger age that you didn't even know what it was, which also just naturally causes there to be, for you to be on more of a high alert and be in a higher stress state because you're not getting restorative sleep and you're literally a kid. And then you're going through, superimposed upon that, it's sort of like, okay, now your environment is such that you were experiencing things that can be very traumatic. And then you're going through life. I'm hearing you're having major issues with, back pain, issues related to your spine. So you're having orthopedic issues that ultimately will kind of contribute to the inflammatory response. It makes it more difficult to sleep. You're less active. That leads to weight gain. That makes sleep apnea potentially worse. So it was like this whole avenue and constellation of things. I also deeply empathize with the notion of admitting to yourself, gee, I'm more sensitive than other people. And I think we talk about it more in 2024 than we ever did when we were younger. Certainly was never anything that, I even contemplated in my brain, but I can say I really empathize with that because I do think that that's one of the things that's difficult for healthcare providers is that there's a lot of stuff that's thrust upon you. You want to be very empathetic to what's going on with your patients. It's not always a friendly interaction, unfortunately. And, I would always sit there and scratch my head, like, why am I so sensitive to the fact that this didn't go exactly as planned or as perfect? And there's nothing perfect in medicine. And I really get that. I really, really get that. I do think I have a bit of that as well. What I need to know from you, though, how the heck did you reverse all this? Okay, so you're doing therapy, you're recognizing that you're literally in this like chronic stressed state.
Right.
From all of, basically, I'm looking at it as, I know you've emphasized sort of the psychological component, but I don't see that as being different from the quote medical or the physical component. Like I see these things really paralleling each other. How did you dig yourself out of this hole? How?
To be completely honest with you, I surrendered to God. I said, I have no control over what is happening here. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know where to start. I give up. I need you to give me the answers. And they just started falling out of the sky. I mean, I would wake up one morning and there would be an ad for a new treatment that I needed to try. And I would go try that treatment. And it was unraveling right in front of my face. Do this, do this, do this, do this. And I'd surrendered. Okay, I'm doing all those things. And every single one of them that I did had a very real, tangible result. And I just listened. I would wake up and I would have an email in my account that said, oh, there's this new energy worker down the road. Go check them out. And I would go. I did the magnetic stimulation. I did neurofeedback. I did meditation. I did energy work. I did sound healing. I spend a lot of time in nature. I found that as a highly sensitive person, I have to do a lot of grounding. And that means, for people that don't know what it is, you actually have to put your body in contact with the earth because the earth resonates at a different frequency and our bodies need to reset. And if we're not resetting our bodies, especially as a highly sensitive person, we aren't recharging our battery. What we don't realize as humans is we are a walking battery. One, if you're not getting sleep. Two, if you're not charging your frequency right, your energy isn't flowing right. And this is part of what I teach in my coaching is releasing energetic blockages that are inside of our body that are causing sickness. And they're causing illness, they're causing disease. And because we don't understand the flow of energy properly yet, there's so many people, especially practitioners, that look at it and they go, that's just nonsense. That's just nonsense. No, it's not nonsense. It's very real, especially with the new generation of people that are coming out that are very in tune with their body. They're not using the logic brain anymore. They're using the sensitive body. And that's where we have all these issues understanding autistic children. We don't understand that they're using their body. They're using their physiological responses to things, their energetic responses to things. We, as logical human beings, can't make sense of that. We're going, what am I looking at here? This does not make any sense to me. But if you walk up to an autistic child and you approach them energetically, they'll have a full conversation with you and they'll feel comfortable and they'll feel reassured. And a lot of people are really starting to crack this open. They're starting to see how very real it is. But the problem is most people just don't understand it.
So beyond the sound healing, talk to me about how bad your sleep apnea was, because it's not, people may go, oh, BiPAP, what is that? And how is that different than CPAP? BiPAP is often used if we have more severe cases where there's a lot of upper airway resistance. We really need to try to keep the airway open. And if you can imagine what's happening, literally it's a mask and it's pushing air in to literally stent open the physical tissues. And normally in and out is when you breathe in, when you breathe out, there's sort of the same pressure. And that's CPAP, or continuous positive airway pressure. And now APAP is basically auto CPAP. It's just the machine adjusting the pressure. BiPAP really is the pressure in is higher than the pressure out. There's times when, even if the airway pressure isn't so significant, if you have severe claustrophobia, which you had described, Jasmine, that can be really helpful to the airway. Meaning that it just allows you to get more comfortable with it. Sometimes it's just a comfort issue. Sometimes I really have had patients where they really need that because it's not just sleep apnea. They may not be ventilating properly, meaning they're not exchanging carbon dioxide properly. Can you go into a little bit about that diagnosis? Did you have to go to a sleep lab or did they do a home sleep apnea test on you?
Yeah, I did both. And for me, I had to attempt to use the CPAP before they could put me onto the BiPAP. I had no strength. There was nothing in there that was supporting me at all. And so having the continuous airflow was putting me in further stress. And so they did the BiPAP with me, which I gradually got used to. But yes, mine was severe, off the charts severe. I was at 55. And I mean, when I went in and had the second lab done, the doctor that I saw, who was just absolutely phenomenal here in Arizona, he was like, I don't want to let you walk out this office. I am terrified that you're not going to make it through this next night. And I was just like, well, I made it this far, so let's see what happens. But yeah, I fell into the severe category. And
wow. And at this time, was your weight still kind of hovering close to that 300-pound range when you started your treatment journey with sleep apnea?
By that point, I had managed to lose about 20 to 30 pounds using the metformin and the ephedrine. But yeah, I was still pretty up there. But what was really significant for me was that my stress level hadn't changed. I hadn't realized how profoundly cortisol levels affects your weight. So it was really when I started to focus on de-stressing my body and tuning into finding that relaxed state and understanding the difference between a relaxed state and a high tension state. And most of us are so used to a high stress state that we have no idea what it means to be calm. We have no clue. And then when you start to learn what that is, it is absolutely traumatizing. Your body, your entire nervous system has to recalibrate. And you're like, what the heck is this? your body's calm and you're like, there's something wrong.
Yes, it feels uncomfortable.
It's extremely
to
uncomfortable.
not. It's a really paradoxical feeling. You get so used to. In my particular situation, it was feeling like I was going 1,000 miles an hour at all times. Other people may describe it differently, but I do find myself, even like on a weekend, now that I'm not taking call on the weekends and things, I have time to actually just sit and be. And I actually have to talk myself into it. My husband and I are both guilty of this. We're like, oh, great, we have some free time. So let's do planting and let's go here and let's do that. And it's like, it's so easy for us to become busy because that is the normal for us. What a key point.
And now a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
With sleep, Dr. Cole is here to help. Whether you need a comprehensive sleeping coach program, suspect you have sleep apnea, or simply seek a second opinion, she's available for consultations in New Jersey, New York, California, and Georgia, with more states coming soon. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation today to find out which visit is right for you at asktosleepmd.com and start your journey to better sleep with a trusted physician.
If you are liking this podcast, if you're finding it educational, if you are feeling more empowered to go to your doctor with any sleep issues that you might be having to address them, please, please, please lend your support. Make sure that you are liking, following, subscribing. I am available on YouTube. I'm also on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. The website has launched. So we have asktosleepmd.com to be your free educational resource. We've added many new blog posts filled with juicy information. If you would like to support the podcast, we now have a way for you to donate. This is a labor of love. I truly enjoy what I am doing. It would be inspiring and truly helpful if you wouldn't mind even so much as donating $1 to keep this podcast going, particularly if you really find this free education a good platform for you and a good resource for you. I also have affiliate links for products that I'm a proponent of, such as Quiet Mind. So please check out the website, sign up, and you will get the latest news, the latest blogs, some sleep tips, and just have a great day and keep listening. Okay, guys, sleep well.
Absolutely. And the fact that you consciously know that is beautiful. There's so many people that they actually don't have the ability to sit with themselves. And it's really difficult to do. And, that's where meditation and prayer can really help someone to learn how to do it. And you have to start small. Most people, 30 seconds. When I start talking to my clients, I go, can you sit quietly with yourself for 30 seconds? And most of them go, what are you talking about?
Wow. When you think about how little time that is.
Right. The phones make it so much harder. And nowadays it's like people can't even go to the bathroom without their phone. Their brains are so constantly being bombarded with movement, and it's so detrimental to our bodies for our healing to be still, to be quiet.
Wow. I'm very fascinated by the fact that you not only did, really, this is an example, guys, and I think this is where it's really important in what I've been trying to accomplish with this podcast. This is an example of where, yes, you have standard, traditional, basically Western ways to manage sleep disordered breathing. And that was a real medical condition. So that was not ignored. Jasmine's not ignoring that part of her history. But at the same time, it's not the entire picture. So now you have someone saying, okay, I've done a little bit of weight loss. How many of us have been there? I'm treating my sleep apnea. I mean, you're like rinse repeat of so many of my patients. But the missing link appears to be, how do I better manage stress? And so you're kind of going to that holistic, maybe less randomized way in which we approach our health and our emotional health, which can't really easily be tied. There's no like magical pill that de-stresses you. I mean, there are people that tout there's things that will lower your cortisol, but in reality, nothing beats the really hard work that you had to do to be able to develop these, realizations and kind of move yourself forward. That's really interesting. So we have you kind of working on yourself working on actually being compliant with sleep apnea therapy. We're going on a journey, guys. We're traveling. We're en route. So once you were able to get your cortisol levels better under control, or should I say your stress levels? I don't want to label it as just cortisol. That is a key hormone that we often look for when we're looking at, how stressed is the body. There are also other markers of inflammation that can be triggered by stress, like your C-reactive protein and other things like that. But once you felt like you had officially de-stressed, so I'm going to focus on that sort of concept, the de-stressing component of it. How did you get further along in your weight loss journey? Has that shaped your sleep apnea in any way? I'm just curious because you've come so far. I got to hear the rest of the story. I got to know.
Once my body did start to heal, and I did start to understand that, yes, they are all overlapping components. There's not one part that you can overlook and go, oh, well, I'll just skip this piece. And you're absolutely right. It is a lot of hard work. It's not for somebody who's going to go, well, I'll just skip the nutrition part. I'll just skip the stress component. I'll just skip the physical movement component. Every single one of these things is very overlapping. And if you're not focusing on the human as a whole, what does my entire environment need to look like? You are skipping components. And it was really when I understood that I had to focus on making all of it fit, that I really started to see the results and keep the results, maintain them. But now I see nutrition differently. I still crave a cheeseburger or a slice of pizza, but I've gotten to a point now where if I have it, it wreaks havoc on my body. I'll have a slice of pizza and then I'll have an upset stomach for 2 days. But if I go back to fish and nuts and berries, my ecosystem feels beautiful. It flows well. There's no blockage there. But we don't seem to realize, especially in Western society, we don't seem to realize how toxic our environments are. And that's internal and external. We don't have a full grip on just exactly how bad we're treating ourselves. And that goes all the way down into our relationships with humans, especially as a highly, sensitive human being. You really can tell the difference between an authentic human being and someone who's wearing a mask. And when you start to realize the differences in the energies that people have, you start to realize that we are literally bouncing toxic energy off of each other. And none of us want to really call it out. We all sound crazy when we have these conversations. You're kidding me. It's extremely real. And when you realize that, when you actually come to the understanding of how delicate our bodies actually are, then you start to see exactly how stressed out we are. And then you go, well, it makes perfect sense why all of my relationships are failing. It makes perfect sense why I have no good friends. It makes perfect sense why I would rather isolate myself than be out in public. Because you can't have a genuine conversation with a human being where you feel connected and nurtured the way that we're meant to be biologically. And that's how we were built. But in today's society, having a conversation with another human being is like max stress. And you can't figure out why. Well, it's because we have lost connection with ourselves internally. We've lost the connection that we're supposed to have in order to create that flow of proper energy that we have within ourselves. And because we don't have that inside of ourselves, we can't give it to someone else. So we have all these people that are walking around just bouncing bad energy off of each other.
I think what you're saying is so profound. My only disagreement is that if you've had Jersey pizza, then you've had really good pizza. That's what I can tell you. It was just so funny. A friend of mine was showing pictures. I always follow him on Facebook and Instagram, and he was showing pictures of his pizza from LA. And I was like, you did not just tell me that this pizza's better than the East Coast, because there's no way. But it sounds like you really kind of took this approach of healing from within, and not just psychologically. You're doing the physical stuff, but you're also managing the types of food that you're eating so that it's less toxic. What you're consuming is less toxic. And there are schools of thought that we should even be thinking about that with the types of cleaners that we use in our house, the type of materials that we purchase, your shampoo, your body wash, like anything that your, face, our creams and lotions that we do to make ourselves beautiful as ladies. That is so common. Just being really mindful of what those are. And, kind of trying to be better stewards of the environment. So it's really like, what I see is that your purpose is not just about you. It's like you were able to take a step back and say, how am I going to contribute to the betterment of everyone? Because that's really what you're teaching. The life coaching principles that you have are things that you've actually internalized. What I'm curious is, with your continued success with weight loss, and I'm going to assume this means that you were able to continue being physically active.
Right.
Any limitations based on your spinal issues? A lot of people will, and I think this is an important point, or any suggestions or recommendations that you have. I have so many patients that get to the tipping point, if you will, where they kind of see that there's a lot of stuff going on. But now they're heavy, but they sprain their ankle, and it's not healing. Because they're not sleeping well. Because we need to treat your sleep apnea, but there's this chronic stress state. What does that look like in terms of how people can be continuously active? I encourage people, you're based in Arizona, so the climate's like way different. You literally swim all year round if you want. I'm in Jersey. It's like, I have to commit to going to a place where I can kind of do those types of movements. Right. How do people stay active when they feel so limited? Because I kind of feel like they may say, I'm modifying my diet, but I have all these other orthopedic issues. And then to your point, you get deconditioned. You don't move for various reasons, be they a physical pain or what have you. Then you get deconditioned. So when you do move, it's like you talked about, hey, I'm starting to go on walks. I want to be grounded. I'm starting to go outside, and now I'm huffing and puffing. The way you phrased it, I think, was really clever, which is to say, listen, I'm feeling my lungs re-expand again. Because what you're doing is taking a sensation that you're having and saying, I feel myself healing. This is hard. I think the mentality that you go into doing something difficult makes a difference. And I think having that mentality of, I'm going to make my lungs better because I'm going to keep doing this because I know this is going to improve my lung capacity, as opposed to someone else who says, that's too hard, I'm not going to do that. So now I'm going to move even less. And because they don't see that as being beneficial to them.
Oh, of course not. And you don't when you're stuck in fight or flight. And the reason you don't see that is because you're stuck in the wrong part of your brain. And so what you have to do is you have to learn how to pull yourself out of that part of your brain. You're stuck in your limbic brain, and that is survival brain. So when you're so used to being stuck in a part of your body where you're in survival mode, you're not intentionally taking the steps to grow. There's very specific parts of the brain that if you actively make the decision to do something difficult, something you don't want to do, you're automatically growing a different part of your brain. You're expanding your neural pathways, but you have to choose to make the active intention to do it. And I did this all the time. I stubbed my toe. I can't walk. Okay, so figure out another way to move your body. But what it boils down to is figuring out a way to stay moving. And if you have a broken leg and you can row your arms. If you can lay on the floor and do some abs, lay on the floor and do some abs. But I think where most people get really hung up is they bite off more than they can chew. So they go, okay, I'm online. I'm looking at all these fitness figures and they look so amazing. And then they start to self-sabotage. They go, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to go really hard. I'm going to just get this done. I'm going to make it happen. But they don't realize that they're human. They don't realize that they get tired. They don't realize that it takes time. So what they do is they go really hard. They exhaust themselves and then they quit. it really boils down to creating a little less stress for your body, allowing yourself to work into it gently and forgiving yourself, allowing yourself that slice of pizza and then going, okay, I messed up. Tomorrow, I'm going to get back on it. But the key is consistency. The key is don't quit on yourself. So you didn't go to the gym. So what? Get up tomorrow, go to the gym. It's really about learning to forgive yourself for being human and not quitting on yourself. And every single day, try and find something to challenge yourself with. So you wake up and you go, oh, I really want 5 more minutes. I really want 5 more minutes. Go, no. Mel Robbins has the 5 seconds. I think it's 5 seconds. She says, all it takes is 5 seconds. Give yourself 5 seconds to change your mind. You're laying in bed, you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Get up. Just do it. And every single time that you recalibrate those thought patterns, you're creating a new neural pathway. And the more consistently you create a new neural pathway, the more you dig yourself out of that rut. That the self-imposed rut really is what it is, because we all do it to ourselves. And if we're not aware that we're doing it, that's how we get stuck there.
Yeah, and if you don't mind his potty mouth, David Goggins, can't hurt me. I think he's hysterical, but at the end of the day, he is using a bit of self-deprecation as motivation, which may, some people may not align to that. But at the end of the day, what he's really saying is, I am going to figure out a way to make today happen, no matter what. And that is, I think the key message for him is really like discipline. And that's what I'm hearing from you. I think Mel Robbins expresses that. And I love how it's tied into Huberman and, the hippocampus and that fight or flight system. And really, we're evolved beings. We have these other parts of our brain. We've just got to let them be active. And unfortunately, This primitive part of our brain, which was so key to keeping us alive back in the day, we sort of evolved past it, yet it's still very highly active. So we've just created ways to keep it active, even though we don't, have the saber-toothed tiger chasing us or what have you.
Exactly. That's right. And that's what it is really, is we're in a time period in our existence where we are evolving out of that. And that's where conversations like this are very important. We're trying to teach people that no, you do not have to be running from things anymore. We have enough luxury in our lives where we can be still and it's okay. But now we have to reteach ourselves how to do that. We have to relearn that it is safe. We have to relearn that other human beings are just as damaged as we are.
And this is sort of a key component too, to even being successful on your weight loss journey and your health journey, is to actually admit that you've got an issue with this that needs to be addressed.
That's
so
right.
Not ignoring that side of things, kind of, looking at it from all sides, which
Absolutely.
I love. Did your sleep apnea change at all? Or are you still on the BiPAP with your
I'm still
kind of
on
weight
the
loss?
BiPAP. Believe it or not, I am in normal range. So it's taken me 3 years of very consistent work, and I don't think I'm going to get off of it until I feel like I am completely out of the water. But my readings are normal now.
So for people listening, what she's talking about is on your on the BiPAP unit will actually tell you like, hey, is this actually working? Have we resolved your sleep disordered breathing? And it's also the hours used, because that's what it's recording. So like if you use it for 4 hours but you sleep for 8, just know that even though that's the bare minimum, that the end result is, using it for when you're sleeping and when your airway tends to be more relaxed, and obstructive sleep apnea, which is the second half of the night, tends to be super important. So the longer you use it, great. The other key here is sometimes the VA now does a little bit more with oral appliances, but at least when I was training, it wasn't really mainstream all that much. I don't know if they're now farming that out. But sometimes in order to lower pressures, for example, you can do something that's like a combination of what we call an oral appliance that's made by a dentist in addition to the BiPAP, which sometimes helps with pressure. Not all sleep apnea will resolve with weight loss. If you just look at the SURMOUNT OSA trial, which is everybody's been talking about Mounjaro, tirzepatide, the bottom line is that there is a lot of improvement, but it's not always 100% in resolution, right? But it's, there are other ways to sort of manage it. And there's probably going to be newer therapies coming online to help improve upper airway muscle tone that are actively being looked at, not quite ready for prime time, but sort of an exciting time in sleep medicine. So, Jasmine, a lot of really great teaching points here. I do want people to leave knowing that if you're somebody who's on the weight loss journey, like you're doing all the hard work that Jasmine's talking about, or even if you want to go work with her, which I'm going to have ways for you to work with her. What you need to keep in mind is that after that weight loss journey where you really feel like you're in a good place and you're maintaining that, you want to be retested. You always want to keep on top of where in this grand scheme of things did my sleep apnea go. And another thing that does happen once you start getting really compliant with your machine, regardless of what that machine is, BiPAP, CPAP, etc., what can sometimes happen is your airway really stabilizes. So sometimes when we do a test and it's like just one within that 24 hours of you not having used your machine last, what we find is that your results look, quote, normal, like on a home test or something. That happens a lot as a sleep doctor where it's been several years. I'm trying to get this person a new machine, updated data is requested, but this person's had sleep apnea and perhaps nothing has really changed with them for the past 15 years. They're the same size, nothing, like their health issues are all the same. And it's trickier because I actually have to ask them, even though they know I don't use my machine, I feel like crap, they know. The proof is in the pudding there. Like they feel differently, and that's important. I still need to retest them because I'm being told that's what I need to do. And I actually have to be like, I need to torture you for a couple of days. So I actually ask them to specifically not use their unit. I try to keep it to no more than 2 days. Some people say longer. I try to generally say maybe 24 to 48 hours, pretty pleased with cherry on top, even though it's a crappy night, just to further destabilize the airway so we can really tell what's going on. So, this multi-night testing, some of the other things that we're talking about in sleep, I think, again, very, very exciting time. Jasmine, I cannot thank you enough for sharing this incredibly interesting journey. I did not know half of the things you were doing with energy work and looking at stress and stress reduction. You're the first person who's really emphasized that literally, I don't think what I'm hearing from you is you were getting somewhere with doing the Western side of things. Treating the sleep apnea, taking the medications, walking more, starting to work on your nutrition, all of that. But really, you're the first person who's actually emphasized, hey, there's this thing called stress, and it really will impede the success of your results. And however you find a way to really get in touch with that part of yourself, I can't imagine that people aren't really going to be deeply moved and have this really resonate with them, because it certainly did with me. And I have a completely different life experience than you. So we're all kind of in it and kind of going through the same crap is what it comes down to. It just looks a little different depending on which angle you're looking at.
One thing that people really need to keep in mind is that we are fallible creatures. Every last one of us. And there is no version of perfection out there. And I think that people are really trying so hard to reach that level of, in their mind, what perfection looks like, that they're not emphasizing the progress. And because they're not giving themselves that little pat on the back, they're not triggering their reward system. So what they're doing instead is they're self-sabotaging because they're not getting that giant result that they're looking for instantaneously. So I think giving ourselves the small rewards and taking off smaller chunks when we're trying to encourage ourselves to do something different every day. Start with making your bed. It does not have to be hard. Start with making your bed. Start with taking out the trash. It really doesn't have to be this life-altering event right away. I mean, it took me 3 years of really hard, really deep internal work to get to the point that I'm at. And I would not recommend what I did to anybody because I'm the kind of person that when I set my mind to something, I will make it happen. But there's not a lot of people that have that in them. For those kinds of people, that's okay. That's okay. Be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, and reward yourself in a healthy way. You know, most people have this concept of what reward looks like in their brain, and it's very toxic. I'm going to go get an ice cream. You just did all this hard work, and then you're just going to go add more toxic substance to your body. Don't do that. You know, find a way to reward yourself in a healthy way. Go get a massage. You know, go for a walk. A walk is a reward. Believe it or not, when you start to open your eyes to actually what is around you, there are so many splendors in this world that we take advantage of. And we just we don't recognize them for the beauty that they actually have, that they offer to us. Read a good book. There is nothing more profound for your body than to read a book. Reading a book actually triggers massive brain growth. Our bodies weren't actually built to be able to understand letters. It's an adaptation to our physical self. So the fact that we can read letters, written words, is a superpower. And people don't realize that. It's not actually how we were built. So read a book, because it is a reward. Have a conversation with a friend. That is a reward. One of my favorite sayings is, one of the best things for our nervous system is a human being, and one of the worst things for our nervous system is a human being. So be careful.
Wow. Thank you, Jasmine. This has been so uber fun. Yeah, I really look forward. We got to reconnect again. This has really been a cool conversation. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Allison.
Disclaimer. The statements made on this podcast have not been evaluated by the U.S. Food or Drug Administration. They are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. The information provided by this podcast should not be used as individual medical advice. While I am a practicing sleep provider, I am not your sleep provider. You should always consult with your personal healthcare provider for individual recommendations and treatment.